And thank you to the chairperson. Thank you, sir. And for the closing remarks of this conference, I would request Lieutenant General Retired A.S. Kalkat to kindly grace the dais.
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been 1.5 days of the most interesting, highly cerebral, and very objective discussion on a subject which is very dear to the hearts of many of you here, and also personally to me. We were honored today by having, and yesterday, by having distinguished visitors from abroad, which enabled us to have the opportunity to see how they practice this. And the fact that those who were here from abroad have been actually participants on the ground. We can all read books, we can all get professors to come and give a talk from abroad. They are very good. But we were fortunate here to have people who have actually handled these soldiers on the ground in battle situations. It's a rare opportunity for which I must thank the visitors from abroad. Far as Special Forces is concerned, why did I say that's dear to my heart too? I'll go back a little bit. The first time the 3 Special Forces battalions got together into operations, were launched, was in Sri Lanka, where I had the honor of commanding that force. They were part of the 54 battalions that were there. 3 of them were Special Forces. Then they were not even known as Special Forces, by the way. They were para-commando battalions. 1 para-commando, 9 para-commando, and 10 para-commando. It is there for the first time that a special was created. Instead of calling it a para-commando cell, it was called a Special Forces cell. And if I am right, Hardev, you may please correct me, I think Sukhi Man, Colonel Man, was the first OC of that cell, and later on then Colonel Nanavati came in. The other way around, fine. It was Colonel Nanavati and then Sukhi Man came into the cell. And it is at that time we decided that we shall differentiate them from the other battalions. Because there were other para-battalions in the force there. One of those 50-odd battalions, normal battalions, was 5 para, and perhaps some others. So to make sure that there is no confusion, we decided to call them Special Forces. That is the genesis of the Special Forces of the Indian Army. Their performance there, one does not praise oneself, but I was very impressed by many speakers here who were so much conversant with the great achievements of the Special Forces of our friendly foreign countries, and perhaps about some not so friendly countries not present here. So I think to begin with, I would like to mention that there is no reason why we need all the time be averse to mentioning our para-commando achievements if we are looking forward for their future concepts. I will only mention one each para commando in Sri Lanka when I was there. Or since I was there all the time, so I suppose those are the ones. There was one para commando which was responsible for a major action in which they captured certain documents, certain cassettes, which for the first time told us that an Indian member of parliament had not defected but had gone over to Sri Lanka and was operating or mingling with the LTTE and also was giving them, and also was giving them lectures against the Indian state. The commanding officer of the battalion, gentlemen, was Colonel Hardev Liddar. He was commanding 9 Para Commando. This happened just northwest, east of Vavuniya. The second was another action where there was an apprehension of a special messenger of the LTTE who was carrying a letter which is a bomb. A bomb, in other words, it was some secret dealings with some people in India. He was nabbed, and when the letter was opened, it was important enough for the Indian High Commissioner then in Sri Lanka and me to fly to Delhi, and it was opened or presented to then the Prime Minister. And that was the action of 1st Para Commando. Then there was a situation there that the President of Sri Lanka, the newly elected one, went renegade as far as India was concerned. And he threatened to throw out everyone or the IPK, whatever, but more than that, he threatened our diplomatic staff and our High Commission in Colombo. In fact, said that he could no more take responsibility for the protection of the Indian mission. So the question was whether we withdraw our mission from there. In fact, I was called up to Delhi and hauled up or asked the question by the Prime Minister himself with all the other ministers present, what should be done. And a very clear decision was taken. The Indian flag flies there on Indian territory, and by damn we shall defend it and protect it. And we choppered in, actually we flew them in, and later on we got them ready to be able to grapple in, if necessary, to protect the Indian High Commission. For those conversant with Colombo, it is just next door to the British Council actually. And it is in a very much a built up or a very crowded, fairly crowded area. They manned them, there were crowds outside. The High Commissioner, I told him, I will have to evacuate you if necessary. He said, all right, but then please, I would like to be the last man, I'll come with you, because I was also present that day there. Crowds came. It was just a troop of the battalion concerned which held firm. No one dared to cross over. It was clear message there that till the last man is standing of that para commando or the special force battalion, they aren't getting into the compound or the soil of India. And that happened to be 10 para commando. There are many other occasions, but I wish that officers who know about these do talk about them. There's sufficient to be proud of to justify our placing the pedestal on which we do our para special forces. Now there are certain other points, and since the rest finished before time, I think I can cover them. Mine is not a structured talk because these are closing remarks, and therefore they have to take into account the last speaker. So I will speak them, forgive me if they are not sequential. Firstly, the ethos of a special force unit very much depends on the country that it belongs to. The special force units of the United States, and I say in plural because I'll talk about that later, there are plenty, are not designed to operate on the territory of the United States. So therefore, their ethos is different. Similarly is that of the Federal Republic of Germany. They are only designed to operate outside the territory of that state or the nation. However, in case of United Kingdom and France and perhaps India, we may have to operate within our own territory. So the ethos is conditioned by the country. But one thing is common. As we understand, special forces are a component of the uniformed military of that nation. If anyone has a different definition, then for that force, this is not the place to discuss it. That is outside in the Ministry of Home Affairs, as a esteemed colleague here did mention, or some other departments, but not in the military. And once you are part of the uniform military, you do not have one freedom, and that is to do what you want. It is not a free-for-all. It cannot be a no-holds barred. A uniform military of a nation fights under the law of the land. Thou shalt not operate outside the law. For that there are other agencies, but the uniform military doesn't besmirch itself by doing thus. This is a debatable point in many countries, but certainly not in democracies. Now, I was told about there was a certain debate about, it was sectarian, shall we say, within the in-house. There was a book written in 1972. The name of the book was The Best and the Brightest, by an American, David Halberstam. And that's when the special forces again for the second time had a regeneration after Vietnam. And that book set the cat amongst the pigeons far as this problem of the airborne forces, the special forces were concerned. And that is where the controversies arose. They still carry on. So it's nothing new. If we have discussions here today, it is nothing new. It has happened in the past. Perhaps it will happen again in the future. Today the US had, perhaps, to the best of my knowledge, 3. They have the Rangers, the Green Berets, and the Delta Force. Delta Force is a consequence of this book, basically. But are there any more? Are there, you can tell? 3 I know of. So proliferation is not only in nuclear weapons, also in the various special forces. Apart from this, there are certain countries which have special forces which have given the special forces a bad name. Certain countries in Southeast Asia and others have used special forces as hit squads. We shall talk about it a little later when I talk about certain little experience, which I will take the liberty of this time. There was a mention made about, very cerebral by an esteemed speaker from the United Kingdom, the General, that there's an apocalypse around 2020 when 40 or more states will have decayed or perhaps would become failed states. It's horrifying to know that there are so many decaying states today. Indeed, I agree. But then that's largely a question of governance. And when we talk of governance, that is to be addressed politically, not militarily. So I think somewhere we will have to be careful not to give our... you are prepared thereafter to go to war also. And that's a decision the cabinet will have to take if the time comes. But it can't be ad lib, launch it kind of a scenario. The other point I would like to clarify is that there are special forces and there tends to be a confusion between security forces. We must never let them associate in any form with our special forces, which is an honored name, which has some meaning. In this context, I may mention, in China, the budget came out day before, just 3 days ago. And you may like to note that for their internal use, the Chinese have realized now that they would not like to use the PLA and they want to use their own security forces. And the budget allocation of the security forces is 2.3 times more than the budget allocation for the PLA. This should give an indication of how states, and this is a major power, are addressing the issues and problems. Maybe we may have to learn something. When within our own country there's the issue of committing the military against your own state, against your own people, or you want to use other forces. A little bit about my own experience. We had these 3 battalions because they were highly trained, highly motivated, and very well led. There was a tendency of my divisional commanders, any difficult task, give me a para-commando battalion or a team, that's about 120 odd people, they would like them to do it. A normal task which a normal battalion is supposed to do, as someone very well, General Jambal or someone did bring this out. This is a tendency. You do not use a derby winner to pull a cart. And that tendency is because obviously they lack the confidence in their own command to deliver. And perhaps that is one of the things which bites the special forces senior officers, that we are liable to get misused if they are handed over to field commanders. Probably, I'm not sure, that's their worry, that they will not be used properly. Maybe that is one of the causes why they're wanting a special forces command or whatever else. They mentioned a very good idea. Someone mentioned about a joint forces command, a joint special forces command. Whether the ultimate 3 people who are charged with the defense of the realm of the day, the 3 chiefs of staff, accept or not, is their wisdom and their decision. But whatever be it, whether joint forces or whether under respective service, they will, as long as they are a component of the uniformed military, have to follow a certain chain of command. And should this suggestion not find favor and the special forces remain with the service concerned, I would beg to venture that don't go with an ongoing belief that your commanders of the line, and I don't mean company or battalion, I mean your divisional commanders, your corps commanders, your army commanders, are incompetent enough to know how to employ special forces. I think you're not being fair. So therefore, should that happen, that they have to go there, you have got to have faith in your chain of the command. question of using special forces within our own territory. We may have to use them. Someone did mention, oh sorry, before that, about the achievements, I only talked about the army. I should again make a mention of what Admiral Sinha mentioned about a young boy, a naval marine in the Jaffna Peninsula. Actually, there were two of them, a sub-lieutenant and another officer, who were given a task of jettisoning the boats on which the LTT, who were now being driven back, were trying to escape across the lagoon to the mainland. And our worry was, if they escape, then they will be inflicting more casualties to my soldiers later. So these two people were sent there. And what happened that the rest of them were ambushed. These two were able to get away. So they decided to lie dogo there. They burned the boats, but they couldn't get away because they were caught between the LTTE, who couldn't get away, and the lagoon. And I can now understand why that admiral said they must be waterproof, because this young officer's radio set he had jumped into the water to hide was not waterproof, and he was out of communication with us. Well, purpose was achieved. Third day we were able to rescue him from there, or we linked up our forces, and he had done a magnificent job for which I'm not sure he got a Veer Chakra or a Mahavir Chakra, but one of the two awards was immediately recommended and awarded to him. So this was that, lest it be said that I am only talking about the Army Special Forces. I think Navy has also achieved a task there, must be recognized. The final point to end this meeting here, use of this military in your own country. Gentlemen, 9/11 was the worst attack the US ever had on this soil. It shook them. The world was with them. The United States did not activate their military. Not even that, even the National Guard was not called out. The aircraft flying in the air were part of the NORAD defense which were there. So countries with democratic values and high democratic values tend to use less their military for such tasks. They have other forces. So this may be kept in mind, because time is now coming that there will be increasing questioning of actions, which this talked about rapidity of communications, live reporting happens, and I do not think any man in uniform wants to get in any way entangled in a domestic situation of that kind. Having said that, there's a lunch later on. I think we have all learnt a lot. I also hope that our honored visitors from abroad have also picked up something worthwhile from us. And at the end, I have to thank, apart from the Cenjows faculty and the staff of Cenjows, they are joint sponsors, SP Publications, for having made this event possible. And I have no doubt that we shall be able to conduct similar get-togethers in time to come. The next item on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is lunch. Thank you.
Thank you to Lieutenant General Kalkat for his closing remarks and for sharing his views and insights. And thank you to each one of you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on behalf of the organizers, Cenjows and SP Guide Publications. I thank each one of you for joining us in this 1.5-day conference. And as Lieutenant General Kalkat said, hope it was a learning experience for everyone. So thanks once again, and request you all to kindly join us now for lunch.